Hi ladies and gents, my name is Thom Gibson, and recently I got an email from someone who is looking to use some of the classroom economy resources in their classroom this upcoming year. And she asked me a few questions, and I thought it would be a great time for me to kind of reflect on how my classroom economy went this year, and especially reflect on some of the changes that I made this year compared to my previous years, which a lot of my video series has been based off of. So the biggest change that I made in my classroom economy this year was I switched from using My Kids Bank as my online banking system to using something called Bankaroo. And the reason I originally made that switch was because I wanted the students to budget. And last year I had them on My Kids Bank to keep track of all their transactions, and then I had them on Good Budget to keep track of how they were going to spend their money. And students were getting confused moving back and forth because they would say, how come things aren't logging into Good Budget? And I'm saying, well, you have to put it in there and actually say that you spent the money. It's not going to come automatically from what you put in My Kids Bank. And then when I found Bankaroo, I saw that they had a feature where you could create these little goals and students could put money from their bank account into these goals. And so it was kind of like the budgeting and the banking system all in one, which I really liked. I would say I am considering going back to My Kids Bank, mainly because with My Kids Bank, the history that shows up is a little bit clearer on what it means. And as a teacher, I can go back and delete certain transactions, especially if kids are kind of being goofy and giving each other $200, but then giving it back or doing something that ends up throwing things off. And usually I only have to have a conversation with students once and they don't do it again, but it's a lot easier to be able to go and delete those transactions instead of saying, oh, he accidentally did this, now I have to go adjust the amounts. In Bankaroo, you can't really do that. And in Bankaroo, on more than one occasion, students would hit okay a couple times because the website's not the most responsive. And then every time they hit okay on a transaction, it would show up like 2 or 3 times. And then that was really frustrating as a teacher because I couldn't even go back and delete those transactions. Instead, I had to count up all the money that they weren't supposed to take out and then deposit it back into their account, which was just a lot more time consuming. One of the hiccups that I ran into on both of them was whenever a student bought their desk. I had their rent come out $1,000 every month automatically. And if I deleted that automatic transaction on either My Kids Bank or Bankaroo, basically to kind of say, oh, I'm not going to do this automatic transaction anymore, it would delete the transaction, but then it would also delete all the previous months' transactions of when they paid rent. If they went 6 months paying rent, if I delete the automatic transaction, instead of stopping the automatic withdrawal for the rent, it would just end up deleting it and putting like $6,000 back in their account, which was kind of weird. And so for both of them, I had to go into it and then say, okay, I want the end date to be today. And so I don't continue to do this. But then on Bankaroo, every time you set a new allowance, meaning like their paycheck, or a new withdrawal, like their rent, it would show up almost as if it was a previous transaction. So the fact that I set rent to come out at the end of the month, it would say rent set to come out this day, minus $1,000. And students would be like, wait, it took out $1,000. I wasn't supposed to take it out. I thought it wasn't supposed to come out until the end of the month. And I would say, oh, it's not actually coming out. I think they're just trying to say that it's going to come out. So that whole history in Bankaroo was a little bit more confusing than it was in My Kids Bank, where it shows whether it was a deposit or a withdrawal and the balance at that time when that deposit or withdrawal was made. The interface on Bankaroo is a lot nicer, and I did really like the fact that when they reached their goal, they had this little envelope and it showed their progress. So if they wanted to save $4,000 for their desk, as the money went into the goal, it was no longer part of their general funds. And then once that goal filled up, it's as if that money was gone. Speaking of myclassroomeconomy.org, they did reach out to me last year because they were starting to develop their own online system. And so I kind of gave them feedback on what I was looking for in one of those online banking systems for a classroom. From what I saw, it is not up and running yet. It might be running up before the next school year, and that'll definitely be something that I look at as an option between Bankaroo, My Kids Bank, and maybe myclassroomeconomy.org. But if it has a way that I can make bankers and clients, and I can do automatic withdrawals and deposits fairly easily without having to change ending dates or anything like that, and I can go back and see the transaction history and delete certain transactions and see what the balance was after or before that transaction. And if it has budgeting built into the app, I think one of the real life apps that does this really well is everydollar.com. I don't use it because you have to pay $100 a year to be able to link your bank account to the budget, so that way you can just say, oh, I bought this, let me drag it to this envelope, and then it lowers the amount of money that's in the envelope because you virtually just used that money. So if all of that was in one place, that would be my ideal banking system. Maybe one of these 3 platforms will have that by the beginning of the next school year, and if so, then I'll definitely go with that one. Another question she had was, what are some examples of meaningful and useful businesses that were proposed? As far as businesses go, I usually try to hype it up a little bit at the beginning of the year and telling students that they can make extra money outside of what was just regular bonus money by starting a business business, and they would have to fill out a business application form to get permission to run their business in the classroom economy from me. Generally, if they had an idea that was even halfway fleshed out, I would meet with them. I'd say, all right, make a poster so you can advertise, and then you can start your business. I found that the most successful time for running a business was giving them maybe 5 to 10 minutes after the auctions every month. And so that way they had one day where they're going to bring all of their items and kind of be like, all right, now that the auction's over, we have about 5 or 10 minutes. If anyone has a business, you guys can go ahead and sell peer to peer. And students would go around and go to each other and stuff. And that wasn't as organized as it could have been. Some students were just kind of like trying to make transactions across the room. And I wanted to let the students kind of come up with ways to organize themselves, but I'd be like, hey, make sure that they're paying you for this and don't just start handing these things out and like, oh yeah, everyone get in a line. And then they're like writing it down and making sure that they're seeing them make the payments on Bankaroo. But the most successful one was where a student was buying treats outside of school and then bringing them. It was like ramen or chips. And usually the day before the auction, he would like, hey, what do you guys want me to bring? And then he would decide on what he wanted to sell them for. I made a podcast on that aspect of the classroom economy that I'll link right there. But it kind of went into how he started developing these incentive programs, and it was pretty cool. And so he made a lot of money for several months in a row. And some students set up businesses where they're like, I'll clean your locker out for you. But anything that involved setting up time outside of the classroom to do something almost never took off. And I told students this when they set up their business. And I don't know if it's just like a culture of our school that most students don't really use their lockers, but I think having that immediate gratification of if I pay money, then I can have that really cool box of cookies or I can have that bag of chips or something was a lot more of a pull than saying, oh, I can go pay someone to clean out my locker. Some students wanted to run a loan business, but they didn't really flesh it out too well. And I'm not huge on loans because I kind of want students learning how to save money up and not go into debt and how to enjoy the fruits of their labor by spending cash for things, not using credit or not using loans. And so I kind of dissuaded that, but if a student came to me with a really kind of thought out idea of how they were going to do it, I think I would consider it. Another question she asked was, what did you require for them to earn bonus money? Was it a proposal or an actual running business? As far as bonus money, everyone had the opportunity to earn bonus money every month. I had one day out of the month, usually before the auction, where I gave them about 10 minutes to document all the things that would count as bonus money and to go to their banker so their banker could deposit that bonus money. Anything that was over $500, I had to take a look at just to make sure that the student wasn't confused about what counted as bonus money. This year, instead of them going to their banker with their actual spreadsheets, I had a shared spreadsheet for all my classes. I had students on the left side and months across the top. And under January, a student would find their name, they'd put their bonus money, and it was separated by bankers. So the banker could see, oh, here's my 4 clients, here's the bonus money that they have. And then they would highlight the bonus money when they actually put the money into the account so they can keep track of whose they deposited. And again, that happened once a month, and it was about 15 to 20 minutes of class time to do that. I'll link to my bonus money video right there, which was how I did it last year, where students actually brought their sheet to their banker. Have you ever tried anything besides an auction for students to spend money, like a student store, coupons, etc.? I've never done a student store outside of the students who started their own business and their own stores. Right now, it's up to the auctioneer to bring stuff, and then students can also get tax deductions if they donate to the auction, and their deduction is dependent on how much their donated item sells for. The auction mixed with the opportunity for student stores and student marketplace is really the only time that students have been able to spend money in the classroom economy. I don't let them buy coupons for like homework passes or anything, mainly because I don't have a clear conscience of like giving a student a 100 on a homework assignment that they didn't do just because they bought a coupon or something like that. She said, you say that you've had the kids save for an emergency fund. Did you ever create a situational emergency where they needed to use that money for repairs or damages? This year I did not do that, but last year I did. I think I waited till like we had a day where there was like a pretty bad storm, and I used that opportunity that when we got to school, I was like, there's quite a bit of damage. This place was flooded, lots of damages to the classroom, lots of damages to your desks. Luckily, we were able to get some renovators out here and get new tables and new desks, and students really thought that I was serious. They're like, these don't look like new tables or new desks. And luckily, if you have an emergency fund, you will be able to pay for the repairs. It will cost $150 per person, and I think I told them to put like $250 in the emergency fund just in case something were to happen. I almost always said it like that, and so students knew that eventually something was coming. I didn't do it this year because the emergency fund in Bankaroo, if they put the money in the emergency fund, they would never be able to take it out, and if there wasn't an emergency, then that money is gone. So I liked it with good budget. I was able to actually put money in or take money out, so I just decided not to do it this year. What were all the categories for your funds or savings? This year I had students make 2 different goal goals in Bankaroo. One was a goal to buy their disc, and the goal was $4,000. And the other goal was a charity goal, which if they saved $1,000, they would actually be able to give real money to a charity. They ended up partnering with their parents in the beginning of the year to say, hey, mom and dad, if I save $1,000 in classroom economy, what charity can we give to, and how much real money are you willing to give for my $1,000? I did a video on how I set that up that I'll link right there. And some students were able to fill up that charity bucket one time, and they sent the email to their parents, and then they actually donated the money. Some kids filled it up multiple times, and so their parents ended up giving a lot of money to those charities. And some kids never were able to fill up the charity because they were always in debt, or they were just using their money up in auctions. But before every auction, I highly encouraged students to put at least 10% into their give fund and decide how much they wanted to give into their desk savings fund. If students said, do I have to give? I say, I really would love if you were to give 10% in your giving fund. Yeah, I know, but do I have to? I would really love if you gave 10% in your giving fund. I really didn't want it to be mandatory, but I kind of wanted them to think that it was. I wanted them to get in the habit of actually giving and not just using all of their money for themselves. But if you want to look through some of my other resources, you can go to my website. I've got basically the entire system and how I've run it the last 2 years into one PDF, and it links to YouTube videos, and it links to Google Docs that you can edit to suit your needs. But it's thomgibson.com/classroom economy, and I've got sort of a pay what you can option on there. So if you want to do it, but you just don't have the funds to pay anything, then they're free to download. Or if you are able to buy it, there is a button there for you to donate what you feel would be a fair price for the resources. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you tried it this year and how it went, and if you tweaked anything, and if it worked or if it didn't work. And as always, thanks so much for watching. If you'd like to stay in the loop with any upcoming videos, then hit subscribe. Hopefully I will see you in the next video.